Betrayal was not a fall. It was the door, the threshold, the true beginning of power. Because a man who has never been betrayed is still living in illusion. He still believes the rules are real. He still thinks loyalty is truth, and truth is permanent. But the moment you are betrayed, truly betrayed, something ancient awakens. Not just pain, not just suspicion, but clarity. A new kind of intelligence that doesn't live in books. It lives in scars. Machiavelli didn't flinch at betrayal. He studied it like a scientist examines fire. He didn't ask how to prevent it. He asked how to control it. Because he understood the terrible beauty of human nature, that people will abandon you not because you are weak, but because they believe it serves them to do so. And once you understand this deeply, emotionally, you are no longer caught off guard. You begin to plan for it. You begin to use it. The world teaches you to chase trust. Machiavelli teaches you to calculate risk. He knew trust was always temporary, a currency with a hidden expiration date. But betrayal was eternal, a lesson you never unlearn. It shapes your posture, sharpens your smile, silences your innocence. After betrayal, you stop asking, "Why would they?" and start asking, "Why wouldn't they?" He never moralized it. He never scolded the traitor. Because Machiavelli knew what makes betrayal possible is not the villain. It is your own blindness. It is your belief that loyalty is natural, that people will stay because they should, that you deserve to be protected. But protection is not deserved. It is negotiated. It is maintained. It is reinforced by leverage. And Machiavelli taught his students to never confuse love with leverage. One disappears the moment it's inconvenient. The other stays because it has to dot, and so betrayal became his map. Not a wound, but a compass. He would watch who betrayed whom, and when and why dot, because betrayal reveals character in reverse. It shows you not the image people present, but the boundary they're willing to cross. It strips off the mask. It doesn't just show who they are. It shows who you are in their world. And that information is power dot to Machiavelli. The betrayed man is not a victim. He is a student, a man who learns how to shift his shape. A man who learns how to appear weak just long enough to hear what they really think. A man who understands that vengeance is not about rage. It's about rhythm dot, so he let betrayal speak. He let it happen, because to interrupt, it is to stop the truth from unfolding. He knew the moment you try to stop someone from betraying you, you are already confessing your fear. And fear is a scent. Once they smell it, they'll take more. Instead, Machiavelli absorbed betrayal like a blow absorbed in dance, stepping slightly to the side, letting it pass through the air just enough to see where it would have landed. And then, after the betrayal spent itself, he moved, not in anger, in precision. He knew that people who betray once will often betray again, because guilt doesn't stop betrayal. It just reshapes its justification. He used betrayal to clean the room, to clarify alliances, to reveal the opportunists, and let them hang themselves slowly with their own ambition. And while they thought they were winning, Machiavelli was waiting, because the betrayed man who stays silent becomes the architect. He watches them build their tower of deceit, brick by brick, until one day they look up and realize it has no door, and that is the moment he speaks, not with accusation, but with the kind of voice that makes them wonder if he always knew, because he did. Betrayal, he said, is not a break in the plan. It is part of the plan. If you expect betrayal, you can plan around it. If you plan around it, you can use it. If you use it, you win without ever lifting a sword. Machiavelli taught that to be powerful, you must be betrayed at least once without reacting. You must let it burn, not to punish yourself, but to see what the fire reveals. You will see who runs, who watches, who profits, and who speaks in half-truths. You will see the social ecosystem reorganize itself around your silence. And in that reorganization, you will find your real allies, not the ones who said they loved you, but the ones who prepared for your return. He understood that betrayal purifies the palace. It removes the cheer, sentimental. It kills the illusion of permanence. And the man who builds after that, after the veil has dropped, builds something no enemy can poison, because it's no longer built on trust. It's built on awareness. There is power in not fighting back. In pretending not to know. In letting the traitor feel safe inside their performance. Because a man who thinks he's winning shows you all his tactics. And Machiavelli wanted the full playbook. He saw betrayal as a test of ego. If it crushes you, you weren't meant to lead. If it teaches you, you were being refined. The truly dangerous man is not the one who's never been betrayed, but the one who's been betrayed and no longer needs to prove anything. He walks slower, speaks less, moves like he's already calculated what the others will do next week. Because he has. Because betrayal doesn't end his story. It begins a deeper chapter. And the silence he walks in after that chapter, that is the silence Machiavelli respected. Because in that silence, something ancient awakens. A man betrayed is no longer looking for justice. He is looking for the long game. He doesn't announce his injury. He doesn't beg for fairness. He watches. And in watching, he becomes more dangerous than he ever was in power. Because now he knows who fears his return, who avoids his gaze, who looks too eager to move on. And these, Machiavelli said, are not random reactions. They are confessions. In the court of betrayal, silence is cross-examination. The man who speaks too soon reveals only what they think you want to hear. But the one who says nothing, he becomes the canvas others paint themselves on. And Machiavelli used that canvas as a trap. He gave people time to rewrite their stories, time to shift their alliances, time to convince themselves of new truths. Because only when they are sure you are finished do they act with honesty, and that honesty is always useful. It may cost you position, it may cost you favor, but it will give you the blueprint, the inner architecture of a world you were never meant to see, the hallway whispers, the alternate loyalties, the places where people store their real intentions. And once you've seen that world, you are no longer part of the game. You are above it. That is how Machiavelli played. He didn't seek revenge in fire. He sought it in clarity. He didn't want to hurt the traitor. He wanted the traitor to reveal everything first. Because pain fades, but information grows. And when betrayal has taught you how your enemies think, you no longer need to fight them. You can outmaneuver them without drawing a sword. He taught that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It often comes dressed as devotion, the smile that lingers too long, the advice that sounds too generous, the ally who appears only when the crowd is watching. But the one who betrays you doesn't just reveal their own nature. They give you permission to let go of illusion. And that permission is the most powerful gift they'll ever give. Because once you've seen the betrayal clearly, you no longer owe anyone your naivety. You move differently after that. Not colder, wiser. Not distant, selective. Not cruel, prepared. And in preparation, you discover something deeper. That betrayal is not just about others failing you. It's about you learning to stop abandoning yourself. It's about refusing to hand your loyalty to those who have not earned it. It's about knowing that survival isn't about winning every fight. It's about knowing which battles don't deserve your sword. Machiavelli did not believe in honor for honor's sake. He believed in adaptability, and betrayal to him was not a crisis, it was feedback. Brutal, honest feedback from the world about your position, your power, your reach. And if you were wise, you didn't take it personally. You took it professionally. You adjusted. He once said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But what most forget is why. Because love is emotional. It fades with disappointment. But fear is structural. It stays until replaced. And betrayal taught him who loved out of comfort, and who respected out of necessity. The former fled when the crown tilted. The latter stayed, not out of affection, but because they calculated that staying was still safer than running. And Machiavelli wanted those people, the ones who respected his silence more than his speeches, ones who understood that absence speaks louder than applause. So he built his second empire, not from flattery, but from fracture. He used betrayal as a sieve to separate the ornamental from the essential. And what remained after that, the raw, uncut truth, that was the material he used to rise again. But here is the deeper genius. Machiavelli knew how to turn betrayal into theater. He let people believe they had struck him down. He let them parade. He let them boast. Because he understood that a person's performance after betrayal is more revealing than the betrayal itself. In their celebration, they reveal the depth of their fear. In their mockery, they expose their insecurity. In their rush to erase you, they show how deeply they still feel your shadow. And he let that shadow grow, because the betrayed man who doesn't die becomes myth. And Machiavelli understood myth better than anyone. He didn't chase justice, he became legend. Not through revenge, but through survival. Not by being louder, but by lasting longer. He became the ghost in their councils, the name they stopped saying out loud, the question they didn't want to ask. What if he comes back? That question, that hesitation is power. It slows decisions. It weakens unity. It creates fractures in the false alliances built on betrayal. And Machiavelli knew, the longer you can make them fear your silence, the more control you still have. So he waited. Not because he lacked options, but because every minute they spent thinking they had won was a minute he spent learning. Every lie they told to bury him became the soil he would grow in. And when he returned not with apologies, not with explanations, but with the weight of inevitability. Because betrayal can bury a man, but it can also forge him. It can strip away every softness until only strategy remains. Until the man no longer seeks to be liked, only understood. Until he no longer asks, "Will they support me?" and begins to ask, "Can they stop me?" Machiavelli didn't fear betrayal. He feared stagnation, and betrayal, though brutal, is never stagnant. It forces evolution. It demands reinvention. And the man who rises after betrayal does not return as the same version. He returns with fewer illusions. Fewer attachments, fewer words, but more precision, more vision, more command. Because to rise after betrayal is to say to the world, "You thought you buried me, but I was only learning how to breathe in the dark." Machiavelli intended. And by the time they looked again, the air had changed. The rooms where betrayal once echoed now fell silent. Not because the traitors had left, but because they had been outlived, outpaced, overshadowed by the very man they believed they had broken. Machiavelli knew silence is not the absence of voice. It's the presence of control. He let them speak. Let them write their version. Let them build the illusion that they had won. Because the truth does not have to rush. It waits, and the man who waits learns. learns what fear does to loyalty, learns how weakness tests sincerity, learns how power is not seized by noise, but by knowing when to listen. Machiavelli did not want to escape betrayal. He wanted to become immune to it. And immunity is never gifted. It is earned through exposure, through trial, through the unglamorous, humiliating crucible of being used, misunderstood, underestimated. Because only after you've been discarded do you learn who you are without the mask, without the role, without the throne. And in that nakedness you find your real shape, not the shape they assigned you, not the image you defended, but the one that doesn't need defense, the one that survives fire, silence, and exile. That is the Machiavellian soul. He understood something most leaders never grasp, that betrayal doesn't destroy authority. It tests its foundation. If your power depends on being liked, betrayal is fatal. But if your power is built on truth, betrayal is just confirmation. It shows you who feared your truth enough to silence it. And that fear becomes your map. He walked back into rooms not as the old leader, but as the storm they tried to forget. Not loud, inevitable, not vengeful, unshakable. And people recognized him, not by title, but by the silence he carried. That kind of silence only comes from betrayal. It can't be faked. It can't be taught. It lives in the posture, in the eyes, in the way a man chooses not to react. And that, Machiavelli believed, was the final stage of power. To no longer need to expose betrayal, but to let betrayal expose itself. To build a presence so unshakable that the very people who betrayed you begin to doubt their own story, not because you corrected them, but because your return made their version impossible to believe. He never chased justice. Justice is a crowd pleaser. He chased leverage. Leverage doesn't ask if you're right. It asks if you can't be ignored. And Machiavelli knew the ultimate revenge is not punishment. It's relevance. To still matter when they hoped you'd be forgotten. To be the name whispered in their corridors. To be the face they study in quiet moments of insecurity. To be the memory that interrupts their celebration. He understood that betrayal doesn't just change how you see others. It changes how others see you. They remember how you fell, but they never forget that you rose. And every step you take after that becomes a reminder, not of their power, but of yours. Because Machiavelli turned betrayal into currency, not emotional, strategic. He let it make him sharper. Let it dissolve the parts of him that still needed applause. Let it burn away the innocence that confused proximity with loyalty. Let it teach him that those who betray once often think they've ended the story, when all they've done is handed you the pen. He took the pen and rewrote everything, not through speech, through presence, through the way he showed up without apology, through the way he laughed without bitterness, through the way he let their guilt do the work. Because betrayal leaves a trail, and guilt keeps it burning. People remember what they did long after you've stopped talking about it. And if you stay silent long enough, their imagination does the rest. That was his genius. He didn't need to confront the traitors. He let them confront themselves. Every time they saw his name on a tongue, every time they heard his ideas echoed in a room, every time they realized they had tried to erase him from the game, but he had become the rules. Machiavelli turned betrayal into blueprint. He stopped trying to be unbetrayable. He stopped trying to be pure. He started being inevitable, because betrayal, when faced correctly, doesn't shrink you. It sculpts you. It takes away the illusions you can't afford to carry, and leaves only the part of you that knows how to walk through fire. and come out writing laws in smoke. So he smiled differently now. Not out of charm, but out of design. He walked slower. Not out of weakness, but out of choice. He let the world forget until they remembered on their own, and by then, they couldn't unsee him. He stopped chasing redemption. He stopped explaining. He let history do the speaking, because the longer you remain unbroken, the more your very survival becomes an indictment of their betrayal. You don't have to prove them wrong. Your existence does it for you. Quietly, daily, irrevocably. And this was the hidden genius of Machiavelli's strategy. He didn't just survive betrayal. He choreographed around it. He made it predictable, turned it into a tool. An invitation to see the limits of false loyalty. And he built himself beyond its reach, because betrayal, once endured, loses its sting, not because it becomes less painful, but because you no longer mistake it for an ending. You see it for what it is, a punctuation mark, not a period, a redirection, not a ruin. And in that redirection, a man is born, not the man who begged for loyalty, but the one who commands allegiance through gravity alone. Machiavelli didn't walk back into the halls of power to reclaim a title. He walked in to prove a law of nature, that the betrayed man who returns rewrites the future. He no longer needed walls. His presence was the fortress. He no longer needed proof. His calm was the evidence. And when they spoke his name now, they did so with caution. Not because he threatened them, but because they remembered how quickly silence became strategy in his hands. He weaponized absence, let them build narratives in the void he left, and when he returned, he did not need to argue. He only needed to arrive, because that's what betrayal gives you. If you survive it without breaking, an aura of inevitability, not just in what you say, but in what you don't say. Not just in what you do, but in what you refuse to undo. And if you've ever been betrayed, remember this. You have been given the rarest education, not in books, not in theory, but in the fire of clarity. Use it. Use it to see. Use it to wait. Use it to build. And above all, use it to rise not with vengeance, but with vision, because the man who learns from betrayal becomes a mirror the world cannot escape. And that mirror doesn't just reflect others, it shapes them. If this reflection spoke to something buried deep in you, if you've walked the road of betrayal and found a piece of yourself still standing, then leave a trace below. Comment your silence, your storm, your lesson, and subscribe, not for content, but for a place that understands what it means to rise quieter and stronger.